This was an article I love. I love the fact that journalists get so upset about Saudi Arabia. And I just want to preface this fact that Riot Games is owned by Tencent, which is a Chinese company. They have they've had their worlds in China several times, I believe. I mean, I remember I don't know if the first Worlds was in China or the second one, but you know, it's huge in China. It's owned by China. It's huge in China. China obviously isn't exactly friendly to, they've got several human rights violations under their own belt, but apparently we really got to be uptight about Saudi Arabia because they're mean to a certain group that journalists care very deeply about. So let's read into this. A fat L for people who care about sports washing, and he'll explain what sports watching is because it sounds dumb. A recent town hall from the North American League of Legends Valorant, a broadcast hosted by Riot Games, which the developer previewed to the assembled casters and analysts, and its decision to enter a 3-year partnership with the Saudi-owned and run Esports World Cup raised major questions about the deal, and several attendees. Chief among those questions, first, how Riot intends to handle apparent Saudi interest in hosting a Valorant Game Changers event. Game Changers is a Valorant competitive circuit for women and marginalized genders, aka men pretending to be women. Saudi Arabia, meanwhile, is considered hostile to LGBTQ groups by reputable human rights groups, and women in the country are subjected to onerous legal restrictions. Though Game Changers will not be part of the 2025 Esports World Cup, Saudi interest in the event, in the form of an internal ESL Faceit group document listing, Game Changers expect to be part of the 2025 World Cup lineup, was first reported in the newsletter. So basically, like they're saying, like, oh yeah, you can do your thing, your women's and marginalized genders. I love the fact that they gave women their own like esports thing, but then said, you know what, a bunch of troons can join in and beat the shit out of you. It's fun. It is always fun to see men annihilate women. Because Riot did have an all women's group in their like ESL, and they just got annihilated. It was just a joke. They just not just totally blown out of the league. It was like as you would have expected. So basically, just blah blah blah. He's just this is such a fun question. Good morning, Jack. Also, whether talent will be penalized for speaking out or creating content critical of the Esports World Cup or Saudi Arabia. So if you remember a few weeks ago, I covered it, and maybe it was more than a month, that Riot Games was going to penalize or ban you if you said bad things, even on videos or streams covering League of Legends. But now oh man, what if you said bad stuff about Saudi Arabia? Are you going to punish us too? Riot representatives stressed that the broadcast talent would not be compelled to participate in the new partnership. Advertisements for the basically what they said, like, no, we're not going to specifically do that, but there's kind of an unwritten rule that, hey, if you're representing us, maybe don't besmirch our partners and the people we're working with. They're still supposed to be professional. Talent had privately expressed their frustration and characterized the decision as driven by, greed. Whether and in what form the response comes remains to be seen. Where does he talk about sport washing? Maybe you're reading this, and what is sports washing and why do I GAF, which is give a fuck? Sports washing is a practice by which companies or states distract from internal controversies or bad behavior by investing in sports. This benefits them in several ways. A bad actor can effectively buy positive media coverage by hosting a successful sporting event or sponsoring a winning team. They also integrate over time into whatever sporting ecosystem they enter, make it harder to purge if they transgress. So basically, sometimes people we don't like do things that benefit society, and if they're beneficial, we have a harder time removing them from society. So we don't like that. It's difficult to isolate and punish bad actor if they own a soccer team, a golf league, or an airline. So you can't, get them out of the NBA, kick them out of the NBA ownership if they say that too many black people are attending their games. An airline or investing in dozens of major internal companies. So basically, they don't like Saudi Arabia. They also don't seem to have an issue with China for some reason. It's very bizarre, but very funny. I always like to see journalists like Mikhail Klemenov worried about things that have zero impact on anything. And of course, like I said, the backdrop of China owning them is pretty funny. And speaking of Saudi, well, Bloomberg, Niantic Inc. is in talks to sell its video game business to Saudi Arabia, controlled Scopely Incorporated, for about $3.5 billion. Damn, that is big money. A deal could be announced in the coming weeks. An agreement would involve Pokemon Go as well as other, but of course, if you're buying Niantic, you definitely want to get Pokemon Go. But, it hasn't been doing super well lately, but then, I think Niantic, as a developer, really isn't that good as in terms of making games. It's got really cool technology, and the fact that it built up this sort of network of spots, in parks, using the community to make and evaluate these spots. It has that entire network. So that's really what you're buying when you buy Niantic, is you have all this stuff mapped out in worldwide. I assume there's millions, maybe billions of points of interest across the earth. And that's what you get, so you could potentially, make new games. But like I said, Niantic, I think Monster Hunter Now was a good game. I don't think it was super popular because I don't exactly know why, because personally I think it was really good. But Pokemon Go reached insane levels of success and sort of cultural. What's the word for it? It became like a cult hit, a cultural changing hit where the mainstream media is covering Pokemon Go stories and people walking off cliffs because of Pokemon Go. It just had it reached that level that it was actually causing real world issues. That's that level of success has not been duplicated, and I don't see Niantic being able to duplicate it again. I just don't know what kind of IP could do that.